About 5 months after the Zodiac Killer sent his 340 cipher, he sent a much smaller cipher to the San Francisco Chronicle. About 2 months later, he mailed another short cipher, combined with a map. Earlier this year, many news outlets reported that a French engineer had cracked both of those short ciphers. Many people have been asking me, did he really solve those two small ciphers, and did he really discover more of Zodiac's secret messages? Let's take a closer look. Zodiac mailed this letter to the San Francisco Chronicle on April 20th, 1970. It was about 5.5 months after he had sent his infamous 340 cipher. The letter begins,
"This is the Zodiac speaking. By the way, have you cracked the last cipher that I sent you? My name is..."
This is followed by 13 mysterious symbols. A very short cipher. We often call it Z13. Zodiac claimed his identity could be found in his first cipher, the 408, and many people thought he might have hidden his name in his second cipher, the 340. Zodiac explicitly hints at a name by introducing this third cipher with, "My name is." So everyone's been trying to fit names in the cipher for many years. Before the 340 and 13-character ciphers were sent by Zodiac, the San Francisco Examiner published a challenge from a codebreaking expert. Professor D.C.B. Marsh, president of the American Cryptogram Association, was skeptical that Zodiac would put his name in any ciphers.
The killer wouldn't dare, as he has claimed in letters to the newspaper, to reveal his name in a cipher to established cryptogram experts. Zodiac has not put his name in the cipher because it would lead to his capture. I invite Zodiac to send to the American Cryptogram Association a cipher code, however complicated, which will truly and honestly include his name, for study by myself and my colleagues in the association.
So perhaps this new 13-character cipher was a response to that challenge. The cipher letter went on to say,
"I hope you don't think that I was the one who wiped out that blue meanie with a bomb at the cop station."
Zodiac was referring to the death of Sergeant Brian McDonald. He died 2 days after a pipe bomb exploded at the San Francisco Police Department Park Station, 2 months before Zodiac mailed his Z13 letter. Now that we know the solution to the 340, it's interesting to notice something it has in common with this follow-up cipher letter. The solution for the 340 includes a part that says,
"That wasn't me on the TV show."
And the follow-up letter basically says,
"That wasn't me who killed the cop at the police station."
He seemed to be interested in setting the record straight, or at least appearing to.
Well, of course, a big thing, he says that he isn't responsible for the park bombing, which is very gratifying to us, that we never came up with him in our investigations of the park station that he had done that.
In previous letters, Zodiac threatened to shoot schoolchildren on school buses.
Schoolchildren make nice targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out.
The threats caused enough panic to lead to police escorting school buses.
That was the threat of the Zodiac Killer. Now, every day, police cars follow the buses which would be likely targets. Officers armed with shotguns take the threat seriously. The psychotic killer has already murdered 5. 1 at a lover's lane near a lake just north of San Francisco. 3 others in nearby Vallejo.
In the Z13 letter, he also included a new bus bomb diagram, describing how the explosion would be triggered by sensors that detect when the bus is in front of the sun. But let's focus on Z13 and its 13 mysterious symbols. Many of the symbols appeared in his previous ciphers. A, E, N, the crosshairs symbol, K, and M. 2 of them are brand new, the circled 8s and this upside-down Aries symbol. One very strange thing about this cipher is how many symbols repeat. The circled 8s repeat 3 times. The letters N, A, and M each appear twice in the cipher. Combine those with this E, and it seems like Zodiac is referring to name again. Did he do that on purpose? Also, if you flip the cipher upside down, it looks like it starts with the word want. Well, yes, we do want his name. The cipher also has some interesting symmetries. First, the circled 8s are exactly centered in the cipher. Another symmetry is seen by looking at letters versus symbols. Let's mark the normal-looking letters red. Then mark the remaining unusual symbols green. Then you get this perfectly balanced symmetry in both halves. Each half is a mirror image of the other. So those were a few interesting observations about the cipher, but we're still faced with the problem. How can we decode this? The 408 used simple substitution. The 340 had more steps, but still used simple substitution. So simple substitution seems to be a reasonable starting point, but almost immediately we're faced with a huge problem. It has to do with how short this cipher is. We can look for substitution keys that produce names. Here's one. Lewis Rory Riley. Another one. L. Jacob O'Donnell. And yet another. Eddie Resendez. And what about this? Steve Pete West. So these are all valid substitutions for those symbols, and they produce names that could be real people. They aren't the only ones. That's just a small sample of the thousands of possible names. But how do we know which one might be the correct answer? By the way, there's no reason to limit the solutions to names. What if Zodiac was making a joke, being sarcastic, or making some other statement? Here's one that works. Chief of Africa. Another. Agile Venetian. Here's one that involves a name. Obscene Nelson. And another. Kane Pops Punks. Those that follow the Zodiac case might recognize that Kane is the name of a Zodiac suspect, Lawrence Kane. Someone who's convinced that Kane is Zodiac might believe Kane Pops Punks is therefore the correct answer to the cipher. But that depends on their premise that Kane is Zodiac. And even if he was, that's not a solid guarantee that the solution is right, because so many other solutions are possible. What if a different one was the actual intended message? Compare this to the 408 and 340. Each of them has an unambiguous solution. No other solution keys have been found that produce such long, coherent messages. The reason is because it's nearly mathematically impossible for such long ciphertexts with short keys to have more than one acceptable solution. In cryptography, this is captured by a concept called unicity distance, which is a calculation of how long a cipher has to be before we can be sure that a sensible decryption is the correct answer. It's a complicated topic that I won't get into here, but long story short, the 408 and 340 are long enough to help us be sure that their solutions are correct. And Z13 is so short that many thousands of solutions can be found. Okay, so far, we've only been looking at simple substitution for Z13. A person interested in a suspect might not be able to find the suspect's name that way. Many names can be found, but they're still limited by the repeating symbols. So even more names don't fit in the cipher. That's usually when some people try to change the decryption rules so they can find their suspect's name. For example, let's try this substitution key. It doesn't make sense yet, but let's rearrange the letters. We get James Marshall. Let's try a different key. Swap some letters around again. Now we get John Henderson. Here's one more key. Move some letters. And we have Robert Stevens. Allowing for this kind of rearrangement makes verification of the solution pretty much impossible. I was able to produce about 70,000 common names this way. I'll link them in the video description. How would we even know which one of those might be right? By now you should be convinced that this cipher is problematic. Even if we use a very simple decryption rule, there are many possible solutions. How can you even begin to select the correct one? Worse, we could start adding steps, like rearrangements, which makes so many more possible solutions. But we know that the solution for the 340 required extra steps. First, we had to break it into 3 parts, then read the first 2 sections by diagonals, fix the problems in the second section, then finally read the 3rd section by reversing words. So it's definitely possible that we need multiple steps to break Z13. But how can we possibly know which steps are right and which solution is correct? What usually happens is people will manipulate the cipher until something they like pops out. Then they ignore all the other people who have done the exact same thing. This has happened at least hundreds of times over the years. But recently, one person who did this became the center of a media frenzy. Back in March of this year, French media began spreading a news story about an engineer named Faycal Zahraoui, who cracked both Z13 and Zodiac's 4th cipher, known as Z32. He shared his solution steps in an online Zodiac community and got a somewhat mixed reaction. Some people were supportive, while others were very skeptical. Meanwhile, the story gained traction in French media, which led to a wave of news stories in the US about his claims. So, did he pull it off? Is his solution right? Let's start by looking at his decryption of Z13. He uses 4 different steps to extract a name from the cipher. First, applying the 340's substitution key, converting letters into numbers, converting remaining zodiac signs into numbers, then replacing number groups with single letters. Here are the steps. First, here's the 340's substitution key. Now, here are the symbols that we also see in the Z13 cipher. We can ignore the rest of the symbols, so now we have this partial key for Z13. Now let's decode this cipher. This symbol isn't in the key, so we'll skip it. In our key, the symbol A stands for the letter D, so plug it into the cipher. The symbol M replaces the letter O. N stands for E. E stands for R. Crosshair's symbol stands for A. And K also stands for A. This last symbol isn't in the key, so we'll skip it. Now we have this partial decryption. The next step is to replace letters with numbers. Let's use our simple letters to numbers chart. D is 4, R is 18, E is 5, A is 1, and O is 15. Then he takes any number greater than 10 and drops the 1. This is also known as a modulo 10 function. It's basically just what's left over after dividing by 10. So we replace 18 with 8, replace 15 with 5, and 15 with 5 again. We still have these undeciphered symbols. Faycal uses an astrological chart to assign numbers to the undeciphered symbols. He figured these circled 8 symbols look like the Cancer sign, and this upside down T looks like an upside down sign of Aries. Cancer is the 4th sign of the zodiac, so he replaces these symbols with 4. Aries is the 1st sign of the zodiac, so he replaces this symbol with 1. Now he works out the differences between each number in sequence, like this. First 2 numbers are 4 and 8. The difference is 4. Next numbers are 8 and 5. The difference is 3. Then 5 and 1 have a difference of 4. Then 1 and 4 have a difference of 3. Keep going to the end. And we have this new sequence of numbers. Faycal points out that only 3 digits are involved in this new sequence. It only uses the digits 1, 3, and 4. This made him think of a type of cipher called the Trifid cipher. Invented by Felix Delestel, the Trifid cipher hides messages by first replacing them with sequences that use only 3 different digits. Faycal simplifies this idea by again using the letters A through Z with numbers for each letter's position, but starting the count at 0. These numbers are converted into base 3, or ternary. You might be more familiar with base 2, or binary, which is a way of counting using only zeros and ones. Ternary is similar, except it uses only zeros, ones, and twos. So here's how we can count with ternary numbers for the letters A through Z. Now Faycal splits the cipher's number sequence into groups of 3. Notice again that the entire sequence uses only the numbers 1, 3, and 4. Our ternary counting scheme uses only 0, 1, and 2, so we have to convert the 1s, 3s, and 4s like this. First, replace the 1s with 2s, then replace 3s with 0s, and 4s with 1s. So now we have a new sequence, using only 0s, 1s, and 2s. And now we can get a message from it by looking up letters from our ternary alphabet key. 101 is K, 000 is A, 220 is Y, and 122 is R. And finally, we have Faycal's solution to Z13. KAYR. K-A-Y-R. Faycal believes the solution is a reference to the Zodiac suspect known as Lawrence Kane, who went by other names such as Klein and Kay, spelled K-A-Y-E. Faycal's solution is off by one letter, K-A-Y-R. He says maybe it's just an encoding mistake by the Zodiac, since he was known to make mistakes in his other ciphers and misspellings in his letters. So is his solution correct? His steps are logical and seem reasonable, and he explains each step pretty well. But there are some problems. The plaintext he produces is very short. He turned 13 cipher symbols into 4 plaintext letters, and 1 letter is an error. As we explored earlier in the video, even with the simplest reasonable assumption that Z13 is a simple substitution cipher, we can generate multiple solutions. So we don't have a good way to know which one is right. Faycal's approach has a similar problem. He makes a lot of choices during his decryption steps. Varying the choices, even by a little, can produce other solutions. What if one of those is the right solution instead? For example, we can make another name appear. First, let's apply the 340's key again. We get this partial result. Now convert the letters to numbers. These special symbols look like zeros, so let's substitute the number 0 for them. In this sidereal astrological system, the Aries sign starts in the month of April, the 4th month of the year. So let's substitute its symbol with the number 4. Now apply the modulo 5 operation. Think of it as subtracting 5 until you have a number that is less than 5. So 4 stays the same since it's less than 5. 18 minus 5 is 13, which is bigger than 5. 13 minus 5 is 8, which is still bigger than 5. Then 8 minus 5 is 3, so we can stop at 3. 5 is not less than 5, so subtract 5 to get 0. And we stop there. Do this for the rest of the numbers. Now calculate differences between numbers in sequence. The difference between 4 and 3 is 1. Difference between 3 and 0 is 3. And the difference between 0 and 1 is 1. Continue to finish the sequence. Notice that there are only 4 different numbers in the sequence: 0, 1, 3, and 4. So we can use a base 4 system instead of base 3 or ternary like we did before. As before, separate the numbers into groups of 3. Now, since base 4 uses the digits 0, 1, 2, and 3, let's convert our digits like this. Replace zeros with 2s, 1s with 0s, 3s with 1s, and 4s with 3s. Now the sequence looks like this. Then convert back to normal base 10 numbers we're used to. Four, 0, 43, 63. Now we want to convert numbers back to letters using the simple alphabet numbering scheme. But it only goes from 0 to 25, so let's apply modulo 26 to the big numbers. 43 minus 26 is 17. 63 minus 26 is 37, which is still bigger than 26, so subtract 26 again, which gives us 11. So now we have 4, 0, 17, 11. Convert the numbers to letters, and we get E-A-R-L. Earl. This matches the name of Zodiac suspect Earl Van Best Jr., subject of the documentary The Most Dangerous Animal of All. If someone like Faycal Zarawi was focused on that suspect and discovered the name Earl this way, wouldn't he be promoting this solution? And so that's the basic problem with his solution. He can use a similar approach to make a completely different name show up. I didn't have to change much to make a different name show up, and it didn't require us to accept a misspelled name. Imagine how many more names you can find if you allowed misspellings. Just for fun, here's another way to produce a different name. Let's use the 408's key this time. Here are the symbols in the 408's key that appear in the Z13 cipher. We can ignore the rest of the symbols, so now we have this partial key for Z13. Let's apply this key. Then convert to numbers. The Cancer astrological sign starts in June, the 6th month, so let's replace those with 6. And Aries starts in March, the 3rd month, so replace it with 3. Now let's apply modulo 19, or subtract 19 from anything bigger than 19. We get a new sequence of numbers. Why should we pick 19? Well, we could claim it's related to the period 19 rule in the 340 cipher. Now let's divide pairs of numbers, throwing away any remainder. If we divide a number by 0, we'll just keep the number. 4 divided by 5 is 0. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 5 divided by 4 is 1. And keep going to finish this new sequence of numbers. This new sequence only uses 4 different numbers, 0, 1, 2, and 6. Once again, let's treat this as a base 4 system. This time we'll replace 0s with 1s, 1s with 3s, keep the 2s as is, and replace 6s with 0s. Now we have these new numbers. Let's convert them back to base 10. 31, 17, 30, 29. Subtract 26 from anything bigger than 26. 5, 17, 4, 3. Now convert it back to letters. F-R-E-D. Fred. Turns out there's a Zodiac suspect named Fred Manalli, so someone who's really interested in that suspect might be tempted to use this solution as part of their evidence against him. I've been studying these ciphers for years and have seen so many people approach it this way. They manipulate Zodiac ciphers until something connected to their suspect pops out. But with enough effort, you can make just about anything pop out if you manipulate the ciphers enough. The problem is, people don't notice all the other things that pop out. They fixate only on the things that relate to their suspect. Faycal also produced a solution to Z32, the cipher Zodiac mailed to the San Francisco Chronicle 2 months after he mailed Z13. In this cipher letter, Zodiac says, "The map, coupled with this code, will tell you where the bomb is set. You have until next fall to dig it up." He's referring to his death machine, a bomb that he claimed would be triggered by a passing school bus. The map he sent with the letter shows the San Francisco Bay Area, and Zodiac marked Mount Diablo with a crosshair symbol that resembles a compass rose, with the directions north, east, south, and west replaced with 0, 3, 6, and 9. And he wrote this hint: 0 is to be set to magnetic north, which is where magnetized compasses point, and is slightly different than the geographic North Pole. Let's see if we can walk through Faycal's steps for solving Z32. Once again, he used the key for the 340. These symbols from the 340 key are also found in Z32. Here's a new key showing only the symbols that are seen in both ciphers. Now let's decode Z32 with it. There are 2 symbols that aren't in the key. Faycal calls them Aries and Libra, but he chose to ignore them. Next, he converted the letters to numbers using the simple letter numbering scheme. Then he applied a modulo 10 operation, or basically subtracting 10 until the number is less than 10. He thought this sequence of numbers was interesting, and put the letters back for the rest. Then he interpreted these numbers as geomagnetic coordinates. So this becomes 45.609 north and 58.719 west. Using some kind of conversion tool, Faycal determines that those coordinates point to a spot near a middle school in South Lake Tahoe, California. This is interesting to him because South Lake Tahoe is where his suspect Lawrence Kane lived. Faycal then noticed some pieces that seem like words. This looks like north without the H, and this looks like west rearranged. These rearrangements, or anagrams, seem significant to him since his geomagnetic coordinates are marked north and west. Unsatisfied with anagrams of the remaining letters, he decided that maybe Zodiac made a mistake. This letter is P because the 340s key says the solid triangle stands for P. But what if the correct symbol is the dotted triangle? The 340s key says that symbol stands for L. So Faycal uses it in his decipherment. Then he was able to find the word Diablo, which seemed important to him since the map clue is centered on Mount Diablo. However, he doesn't actually use it directly in his solution. Instead, he wrote the letters into a 4x5 grid from left to right, ignoring nulls and numbers. Then he applied some kind of transposition to rearrange the letters until words appeared, using a program he wrote. I'm not sure exactly what he did, but he described it as shifting rows and columns, kind of like looking for solutions to a Rubik's Cube puzzle. But basically all the letters got rearranged until they look like this. He saw the words find, labor, and day. Remaining letters can be rearranged to spell north, which is missing the H, and west. The phrase Labor Day seemed important to him because in the letter Zodiac said,
"You have until next fall to dig it up."
And Labor Day is around when children return to school in the fall. Further, his coordinates are close to South Lake Tahoe Middle School. So Faycal arrives at his final solution for Z32, which reads, Labor Day, find 45.609 degrees north, 58.719 degrees west. It could be interpreted as the location of Zodiac's bomb and the deadline for finding it. And that's it. After many steps, Faycal produced a readable solution from Z32 using some reason and logic. But to me, there are a few problems with it. For one, the words Labor Day find are anagrams found by rearranging these letters. But there are about 120 million different ways to rearrange those letters. We can find other phrases for the solution, such as a blonde Friday and frail body, bad for Lady Inn, fairly bad dawn, and Fry Diablo, blind for a day, brain of Lady D. You could say the D might stand for Donna, as in Donna Lass, a possible Zodiac victim. These are just a few examples. There's many others. How do we know that all of these possibilities are wrong? Faycal actually uses anagrams for all of the words, including north and west. By adding those 8 letters, the number of rearrangements goes up from about 120 million to about 38 quadrillion, or 38 million billion. Here's a small sample of other things you can make with the same letters. Try a bad torn snowfield. Won't band layers of dirt. Want to rob lady's friend. Bald Tony, a worst friend. Far down by torn details. Find 10 badly raw roots. Drafty Bloodwater inns. Or 2 and briefly stand. Words of Daniel T. Bryant. Dry infant bloodwaters. Was told by a torn friend. Once again, there are simply too many possibilities, so we have to just pick the answer we like best, which is not very scientific. We can make many things with just a handful of ingredients. There's also some ambiguity in the coordinates he found. One thing about geomagnetic coordinates is that they're always changing with time. It's because the Earth's magnetism is caused by the molten metals in the Earth's outer core. When the liquid metals move around, the geomagnetic poles move around. It's not clear the exact process Faycal used to convert the geomagnetic coordinates to geographic coordinates to pinpoint the South Lake Tahoe location. But when I put in his coordinates with his conversion tool, and set the date to 1970, I get these geographic coordinates. If we look that up in Google Maps, we get this point, west of South Lake Tahoe, much different from the location Faycal found. And look how much the location changes 10 years later. Now it gives a point even farther away from the location Faycal found, because the magnetic field of the Earth has changed a lot in those 10 years. I think we need more details about Faycal's conversion to understand exactly how he determined the South Lake Tahoe location. Also, if you look at the original numbers in the early step of his solution again, there are probably ways to turn those other numbers into coordinates instead of the ones he chose. And if he's allowing anagrams for the words, why not allow anagrams for the coordinates? You could probably find some other really interesting locations by rearranging the numbers. Faycal argues that part of why his solutions are compelling is because the 340's key was needed to unlock them. One problem with that argument is that we didn't need the 408's key to unlock the 340, so we don't necessarily know that one of those keys is needed to unlock the remaining ciphers. You could claim that if the 408's key or the 340's key did produce sensible solutions, that might be a good sign you're on the right track. But Faycal's solutions require so many intermediate steps after applying the 340's key to generate anything interesting. And with so many degrees of freedom, we could explore other intermediate steps that produce vastly different answers, like the examples I showed earlier. That's basically the main issue with both Z13 and Z32. There are so many ways to produce messages, even using easy approaches that only use one step, like simple substitution. Back in 2017, I was on a History Channel show about the Zodiac killer. For the production, I made a tool that shows how easy we can get messages out of the Z32 cipher. A month after mailing that cipher, Zodiac mailed another threatening letter. At the very end, he included a little clue about the cipher.
P.S. The Mount Diablo code concerns radians and inches along the radians.
A radian is basically a way to measure angles. So a simple way to interpret his clue is that he gave a location using a number of radians and a number of inches. Here's a map tool I made to illustrate this. Zodiac's hint on the map says to use magnetic north. So the red arrow here points towards where I think magnetic north was back in 1970. As we explore locations with this tool, it shows this green part, which measures the angle in radians from magnetic north. It also shows the distance from Mount Diablo on the paper map in inches. For example, Berkeley is 4.49 radians from magnetic north, and it's 2.1 inches from Mount Diablo on the map. So that gives us radians and inches, like Zodiac mentions in his clue. Now, when I click on a location on this map, the tool shows me solutions to the Z32 cipher that are close to that point. The solutions use simple substitution and normal English language. For example, this point is represented by this solution that says 3.6 radians, 1.72 inches. For the substitution to work, the highlighted symbols must stand for the same letter. For example, both C symbols from the cipher stand for T. Both triangles stand for H, and both O symbols stand for D. The rest of the symbols are unique and can stand for anything. There aren't many repeating symbols, so many of these kinds of solutions fit. In fact, for this tool, I found around 60,000 solutions that are valid substitutions, and a large number of them point to valid locations on the map. Building this tool was ultimately a pointless exercise. It generates so many thousands of answers that there's no good way to narrow them down to a correct one. You basically have to decide which answer you like the best and pretend that all the other ones can't possibly be correct. The problem gets much worse when you add other steps. Imagine if I added some of Faycal's decipherment steps to this map tool. It would add even more thousands of possible answers to the cipher, with no good way to pick the best one. And that's essentially the dilemma we face with these remaining unsolved ciphers. How do we pick the best answer from the many thousands that have been proposed? Why did Faycal's solutions get so much attention? Maybe it was because people were excited about the solving of the 340 and were eager to hear about more progress. And Faycal showed a lot of logic in his steps, demonstrating his knowledge on various technical topics such as substitution ciphers, trinary alphabet substitution, transposition ciphers, electronics, navigation, and computer programming. That knowledge added credibility to his solutions. But for these short ciphers, many steps yield many solutions. The best we can say is, we can't prove that his solutions are right, because many others can also be made, but we also can't say with 100% certainty that they're wrong. It's like if I said that you can find the correct cipher solution printed on a grain of sand somewhere on Earth. I'm not likely to be right, but you'd have a hard time proving me 100% wrong. Nobody's going to check every grain of sand on Earth. As you can see from this video, it takes a lot of work to go over the steps and to try to test these kinds of solutions. When people submit solutions to law enforcement and cryptography experts, they often don't hear anything back. Usually it's because experts can tell if there's any value to the solutions. So like with many possible leads on this cold case, they have to prioritize where they spend their effort. I think some really extraordinary evidence is needed to prove any solution to Z13 or Z32, such as discovering Zodiac's worksheets or journals, or asking him directly on the small and dwindling chance he's captured alive. Who knows? Maybe we'll catch a lucky break on this case one day. But don't be discouraged. If you're working on these ciphers, keep trying. Maybe I'm wrong about how it's almost impossible to prove solutions for these ciphers. I like that we can try many different and creative ideas, and I think they're worth trying out. Maybe someone will figure out a way to prove a solution. Maybe you'll discover something the experts haven't noticed, some compelling piece of evidence no one's considered. Good luck. So what do you think of Faycal's solutions? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Or maybe you have solution ideas you want to share. Also, please help out the channel by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.